Hi, Stephen here for the Idiot Quilter, and here's another interview in my series of interviews with subscribers. Enjoy! So, thank you, Karen, for agreeing to do this interview. This is Karen Campbell, everybody. And Karen, can you tell me just briefly where you are, what your location is?
I'm in Fort Smith, Arkansas, right on the Oklahoma border, just about 700 or 800 miles from you.
Oh, okay, just a little ways away, right? Okay, so how's your weather there today? Is it warm there?
Compared to what you have, yes.
Oh,
it's 48 degrees right now.
28 degrees.
48.
48. Oh, yeah, that's balmy. Because right now we're in Celsius and that's Fahrenheit. We're at minus 17. So that's about, in Fahrenheit, that's below zero. So,
Yeah.
Anyways, but yeah. Okay, so great. So let's jump right in here with the question. So the first thing I want to ask you is, how long have you been quilting and or sewing? Do you quilt and sew or just quilt?
I mostly just quilt now, but I have been a sewist, when they called it seamstress,
Yeah.
for over 50 years.
Oh, okay. So you know what you're doing.
Experience keeping the seams straight, you know.
Okay. So when did you how did you get started then in quilting?
I hit the age of 75 and decided that I had, 5 children, 7 grandchildren, and I'm going on 5 great-grandchildren.
Wow.
I've got nothing to leave them. So I thought, years ago, I had made a couple of quilts, the weekend quilts that are quilt as you go.
Right.
And I really liked them. And I would make pillows for people for gifts, over the years. But I didn't really have the financial capacity to really use quilting as what I love to do when I'm not working.
Right.
So it sort of fell away. But I saw a pattern for a table runner, and I wanted to make it for my daughter, and I did. And the piecing turned out good, but the quilting was awful. But she took it anyway. But it got me going.
Well, that's.
And now I've made 3 of those great-grandchildren quilts, so I'm still working on them. And one of my grandchildren, I made a quilt for when she got married last year.
Oh, nice.
So I've been quilting as a thing that I want to do every day for about 1.5 years.
Wow. So you've come from an extensive background in sewing. So I would imagine with quilting, it wasn't like you were just jumping in as a rank beginner, like the way I did a few years ago with it. So, and that's really nice that you're going to give. It's a nice heritage gift to give to your grandchildren and your great grandchildren. And I hope they appreciate it, because I've heard too many horror stories where they end up being a dog bed.
They may not now, but I think they will
in the future. Yeah. Actually, just to share a side story here, my grandmother back in the late 70s or very, very early 80s, she did a similar thing to what you're doing. She made for each of her grandchildren a quilt. And when I got my quilt, I didn't even know my grandmother quilted. She did all kinds of things. She could sew, she did crochet, she did knitting, but I don't ever remember seeing her actually working on a quilt. And I got the quilt, and it was a beautiful quilt. And, I didn't have any appreciation for it as much at the time. I appreciate the fact that I knew she put hours and hours into it. I didn't like the color. Yeah. And it did, in my first house, it did hang on a wall. But when I moved into the house I'm in now, which I've been in now for 27 years, I did not have a wall big enough for this quilt. It was a queen size. And because I didn't like the colors, really, it was browns and salmons and not my color scheme. Yep. Sat in a cupboard forever. Yeah. Then I got into quilting, whole new appreciation for it. And I reproduced my grandmother's quilt based on her original templates and everything. She's been gone for many years, and created my own. It's probably my most favorite quilt simply because of that link. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I mean about heritage. Hoping
It
people
really,
appreciate
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So did anyone in your family ever influence you to get sewing, or you're at that particular generation where you probably learned to sew at an early age?
My mother was a very busy sewist. She made all of my clothes. I remember only getting one bought dress until I got into college. And she was working at Sears at the time, didn't have as much time. So she would use her discount to buy clothes for me for school. But before that, everything was handmade. I never even thought about it. And I didn't really think about doing it. I did take a class in high school, home ec,
Right.
and learned to sew. Oh, we did a collar and a skirt and, little easy things. But in 1965 or somewhere in there,
Right.
mom got sick and she couldn't really sew anymore. So I was pregnant with my second child at the time, didn't have much in the way of loose clothing. So I was forced to begin sewing. And I found after the first outfit I made, I was hooked. So I rarely made things for myself simply because I'm an oddball size and ever fit. And I was never a good enough tailor to adjust the patterns as I went. So I just made things for my children and grandchildren and toys and stuffed animals and dolls and, lots and lots of
Things.
craft things. But nobody in my family that I can recall was a quilter,
Right.
but they all loved quilts.
Well,
So
that's half the battle, right?
yeah,
With that.
So I always was drawn to them. And I always wanted to make one, but I always figured, my gosh, cutting the little squares and then sewing them together.
Right.
That didn't sound like fun to me. It is when I see a pattern develop, it is amazing.
Yeah.
It surprises me every time.
I
And
know the feeling. Yeah. So I was going to say, I think it's amazing, and I hope you don't mind me mentioning your age.
Oh, please go ahead.
But I think you said you were 77.
77.
And oh, you got a kitty. I love cats.
I know you do.
And cats love quilts, don't they?
They love anything that you're in the middle of.
Yep. Yeah, of course. But what I was going to say is, I think it's really amazing that someone at your age is still doing something like quilting and everything, because I am a great believer in the fact that, yeah, we can't do anything about our physical age, but we can do something about our mental age. And I think quilting really keeps us going. And I really wish my own mother had this as a hobby. She did not. And she just recently passed away, and she was not an old lady. She was 80, going to be 82 this year, but she had nothing to keep her mind stimulated. So she just drifted away. And, I'm using that as a lesson for life, so I think it's amazing that at your age, you've decided to get right into quilting. Well, that was the cat's bum, wasn't it? I just love them.
I wanted to leave something behind that, like you said, even if right now they don't appreciate it, 20 or 30 years from now, there's, when I'm long gone, they'll say this was grandma's.
Yep.
Did this for me.
Yeah, and exactly.
I want that for them.
Yep.
I want to be remembered.
Yes, of course. And so, do you have to date then a favorite creation? It doesn't have to necessarily be a quilt. It could be something else that you've done in your long sewing career.
One of the first quilts that I made a Sudoku puzzle.
Now, what is that?
It's a game that came out of Japan that you got a 9 patch, And you've got to put numbers 1 through 9. No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 1 through 9 to fill the boxes.
I know
But
what you're talking about now. Yeah.
Them. So the next one, they've all got to be different.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you that.
Sure. Yep. I don't see the kitty yet. Maybe the kitty come back in there. Oh my goodness. That's incredible. Love it.
Everybody keeps telling me, but you've got the same color fabric side by side. Why didn't you mix them up? And I go, Sudoku puzzle, you know, they're
Yes, right.
Different.
Yeah.
And
that is a great idea. I don't think I have seen anybody do something like that. That is unique.
I didn't consider it a design, but I did think I was doing something special.
Yes, and it is. It is.
A simple 9 patch. I wanted a quirk, a little, you know, something.
Yeah, that's a really
colors.
Yeah, I know the colors are really nice that are in it too. It's very calming, very calming.
And I meant it for a wall hanging, but like you said with your grandmother's quilt, I don't have a wall to put it on.
That's the thing,
so
right?
It sort of hangs out.
Well, it's a great idea. I think that's, you know, that's taking quilting just another step further into making them, they're just not pieces of cloth sewn together. There's a meaning behind them. And I think that becomes an art quilt, right? That's the definition of an art quilt. So speaking of art quilts and things, what type of quilter would you describe yourself as? I mean, are you lean towards more the traditional following the pattern, or do you like to break out and do something like that quilt that you just did, a little bit more modern or a little bit more experimental?
I'm definitely traditional. I love I love when they stack the little squares together and then put it in the middle of a star or something. I think that's the kind of quilt I want to make.
Yeah.
And I believe that pretty much sticks with traditional, but there's thousands of patterns.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody, they'll do the same pattern and rename it because of the way they've done it.
Right.
Every time I look in, for a block, I get 8 or 9 of the same block. And then, so I'm pretty much using magazines and tutorials.
Yeah.
I love Jenny Doan and Donna Jordan.
Yes.
She is so prolific. She makes hundreds of quilts and she makes it look so easy.
Yeah. And that was a question I was going to ask you a little later on, but I might as well approach it now. So Jenny Doan and Donna Jordan, those are obviously inspirational for you. Do you have anybody else that you follow?
Karen Brown is the first one. The quilt that I made for my granddaughter for her wedding was Karen Brown's What Do I Do with an Ugly Fabric?
Yeah.
She made that wonky square pattern for her son when he was going to the doctor pretty much daily. And I've made 3, I believe, of her Stash Buster quilts. And I love them all. And she's the first one that I caught on YouTube and went, wow, she's teaching me something. I really need to watch her.
Yeah, I know her very well. She's a Canadian. She doesn't live that far from me. She's just in Toronto, just east of where I live. I follow her all the time as well. And I've actually have met her. When I belonged to a guild, she came as a guest speaker to our guild as well. So and I follow Donna Jordan, and of course I follow Missouri Star Quilt Company with Jenny all the time. I think that was one of the first ones, the Missouri Star Quilt, that I got into, and I've been a faithful follower ever since on that. So that takes me to, do you have an area in your home that you would say is your dedicated sewing area?
Yes, indeed. It's actually my living room, but in this house, my daughter and I have the whole house to ourselves.
Oh, okay.
So I have pretty much taken my space wherever I want it. It used to be where my dining room is now, but this space is bigger. And this table that I've got the phone sticking on, I built it.
Oh,
And it's one of those things you put together with 3 IKEA shelf units,
mm-hmm.
plywood, and
Yep.
some big ball rollers, and it's a wonderful thing. Unfortunately, I'm 5 feet tall. And it hits me right about here. I use it to cut, but I used to use a kitchen bar stool with my sewing machine at the end because there's a place in it that gives you knee room and stuff.
Right.
But I couldn't reach the floor, so my pedal had to be on a block, and it kept falling off the block. So I finally said, no, we're not doing that. So now my sewing machine is behind me.
Right.
And I've got my ironing pad right here. And of course, I do the cutting on this. So I'm right here, at least in the triangle.
Yep. So you've got it all set up. Yeah. The way they tell us to do that, the magic triangle, right? With it all. Yeah. And IKEA, I think that's a quilter or sewer's dream, because all of my stuff too is based on IKEA, doing the similar thing that you've done too. So that takes me to, do you have a favorite tool or technique that you like to do or use?
Well, my favorite pattern, I don't know if it's a technique, but I love the log cabin because it's so versatile. You can do anything. You can make so many designs with it. Stars and stripes and, all of it. And it's easy.
Yep.
As long as you keep your seams straight, your block will turn out beautiful.
Yep.
So I've got one of the quilts here that I made in 1989.
Oh, wow.
Is literally falling apart, but let me get that.
Get it. Let's see that. It'd be interesting. I always have problems with log cabin blocks. I don't know why.
And it was, the first one I made was log cabin, but I gave it to my daughter and it fell apart too. So we disposed of it. This one I've just kept just as a keepsake because it's got big in it and the back is almost this big. But, it was one of those that you put it together in a day and it's done.
Yeah,
and
right.
It was such fun, but I always thought it was sort of cheating. They're bringing it back.
Yeah. So why is it falling apart?
It's a twin bed size. I've got 3 dogs and 3 cats.
Okay.
Children, and it's been on my bed for over 30 years.
Oh, so it's been a well-loved quilt. That's why it's falling apart. Yeah.
Literally has been washed to death.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay, but at least you can rest assured that this is a quilt that has been used, it's been loved, and everybody in the family, including the animals, have got to turn with it. So that's yeah. So it may be falling apart, but it's got lots of memories. Oh yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
It's not the point that it can be repaired. It's just
I
dug it out thinking that I would use the fabric, the quilted fabric, to make a stuffed animal.
Right.
When I pulled it out, there's really not even a whole single block that doesn't have, it would be packed to death and it would never look the same.
No.
So I kept it as is.
Yeah, well, there's nothing wrong with keeping it as is because it brings memories, right?
Yes, it does.
So, so what kind of sewing machine do you have then?
I've got a Bernina embroidery machine that I pulled out since I bought it probably 3 times. I really need to use these things that I bought. the machine I've got here is one of Singer's heavy duties.
Oh, okay.
And I figured if I live long enough to make all the quilts that I want to make, this baby is going to get a workout. But I also have, way back in 1966, I bought my first, I'd been given a sewing machine, but I bought my first of my very own. And it was a Singer Stylus. And it's in one of the cubbies in this unit. I still have it, and it's still going strong. It's loud.
Yeah.
But it works like a charm, so I don't have a problem with it. So I've got the Bernina, I've got 2 Singers, I've got a Singer machine that binds the edges.
Oh, a serger.
Yeah, serger. There's that word, and it's not on my list.
Yeah.
Wasn't prepared for that. And I had a Viking, the Husqvarna, that it was just a little straight stitch. It did a beautiful stitch, but I was still using the stylus at the time, so I rarely brought it out. So I gave it to a friend, and I bought one of my granddaughters a little brother, Walmart, $79, for a beginner.
Yeah.
And it's in my attic.
You have them everywhere.
So I've got, and I think those are the original sewing machine that I had way back when, my mother being a sewer that sewed all the time, she finally bought a new machine, and she was working at Sears, so of course it was a Kenmore.
Right.
She said, this was 1964. So I'm not sure the same company has been making their sewing machines all along, but it was definitely a name brand. They had good appliances.
Yep.
And when she bought her new machine, she gave my sister her old machine. So my sister gave me her old machine. So when I had a machine when I started sewing.
Right.
And once I realized this was something I was going to do for the rest of my life, that's when I bought the stylus.
Right. Invested in your future.
Yeah. I am no longer that enamored of the Singer product, but I do like this little guy here.
Yeah.
So
the new Singers aren't what they used to be, what the older Singers were. No, it's changed. I don't know if someone bought out their company and, they just got cheaper or whatnot, but I've heard that from other people too. They're not impressed with the newer Singers.
No.
But, it's whatever you get used to, because, you said you have a Bernina that you haven't really used. I know many people love Berninas, and I'm a Janome person only because I had a Janome dealer close to me when I got into this, and, that's why. And I do love my Janomes and everything, but, someday I wouldn't mind branching out and trying a Bernina machine because everybody seems almost a cult.
They're a great machine. I'm with you. I've got friends that I've got one girlfriend that she's in California, so I haven't seen her forever. But she had a Bernina that she'd been using. Well, when I left California in 1989, that machine was 30 years old. And when I talked to her, about 2 months ago, she was still using that machine.
Wow. Certainly money's worth. Yeah. So if speaking of money, if you had all the money in the world, is there one piece of equipment you would invest in?
Well, I would love to have a long arm, but I really doubt very much if I would live long enough to get very good at it. And I am getting better at the quilting on my little machine.
Yeah.
But I would like one with a bigger throat.
Right. Yeah.
I would like to invest in a really dedicated quilting machine, but I want it to be that I can use it for both piecing and quilting. I don't want it just to be, quilting machine, like a long arm or some of those shorter long arms that they have.
Yeah. I can tell you now that I own a long arm, I absolutely love it. I'm still not good at free motion quilting, but at least I've got a long arm and I can practice, and it gets me through what I want to do. But yeah, I know about the bigger throat in a sewing machine. That's what I did too. When I upgraded my sewing machine, I got one with the biggest throat I could, because at that point I was, using the domestic. But yeah, the long arm, I'm glad I have one. So, and that I have one. So have you ever belonged to a guild or an online group?
I have joined a couple of online groups. I don't even know if there is a guild in this area. There probably is. There's lots of quilters around.
Yeah.
But they're more in the Little Rock area.
I see.
It's a little over 100 miles.
Well, a little far to get to, right?
Run to on a Saturday, But online, I get that camaraderie that, this is what I did, and everybody is thrilled for me.
Yeah.
And I do the same for them. I think that's why we join them.
Well, yeah, it's good support. It's good, it also, you learn things as well, I have found. So
I love it when somebody asks, give me your opinion. I've got this done. What color should I use for the borders, or, what have you. It's fun to give that feedback.
Yeah, and it's also during this what we've been going through the last 2 years too. It's been a real great social outlet as well. Even though we might be at home in our own environment, but being able to do something like what we're doing right now with Zoom, it's made life a little bit more bearable in this time period we're going through.
I'll be honest with you. We were locked down for 3 months before I knew about it.
Oh, yeah.
Because once I retired, I grew roots right here.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
I don't even get dressed every day. You find me in sweatpants and my pajama top, and I don't get dressed every day. I know I'm lazy, but that's the nice thing about being locked down, and the way I live anyway.
Yeah, so not a big deal of a change there, but yeah. So what was I going to ask you next? So where do you get your supplies? Do you do a lot of online ordering, or do you go to some physical stores, and where do you go?
I'll be honest with you, I buy a lot of fabric at Walmart.
Okay.
But their cotton, although if you look carefully, you can get good stuff. A lot of it isn't. This stuff all came from Walmart. And I doubt very much if that's why it fell apart, but
right.
I can see a difference. I can feel a difference in the newer fabrics.
Yeah.
So if you're careful and do that, feel
then
that.
You can get, See, our Walmart here does.
The order is from Missouri Star.
Yeah. I've gotten a lot of things from them as well. I buy a lot online, but I have a really great quilt store in my area here that I also go to. But I'm a bit of a fabric whore. As I've explained on some of my videos before, I got this thing.
I saw what you got for Christmas just on the video yesterday. And amazing. I was drooling. I love Cap.
Yeah, I do too.
I bought one of his 2.5-inch rolls, and I just looked at it. It's not been used yet.
I know you don't want to cut it. That's the problem I have.
I just want to look at it and touch it.
Yep. You just want to roll around in it.
It's amazing. And I love Lori Holt and Tula Pink. And and those designers you don't get if you don't go to a quilt store. No,
that's true. You can't get those at Walmart. See, our Walmarts here don't really sell fabric. The one nearest to me sold a little bit, but like you said, you got to feel it, and most of it was crappy. But now I've noticed this Walmart that's near to us. The last time I was there, and I don't get out much to these places with, you know, shut down, lockdown, or anything like that. They got rid of all of it. So it's definitely something I think, or at least maybe in some of the stores in, you know, bigger cities than mine, maybe they have it, but out here, no.
I don't think it has anything to do with the size of the city. I think it has a lot to do with competition, because Walmart doesn't have a lot of. We do have a Joann's.
Yeah.
They're carrying exactly the same product, you know, same quality,
right,
and doubling the price. So,
yep.
You know, I don't buy fabric at Joann's unless it's dress fabric and I want something.
Right.
And then usually I go online and go to Mood.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Get, you know, some beautiful fabric at
yep.
reasonable prices from them.
Yeah,
so
I haven't bought anything from Mood, but my husband has, because he's a garment sewer, and he likes Mood as well too. So, yeah. So,
you don't get to feel it, but you.
Yeah, well, you know, a lot of quilters have they don't like to buy online because they can't feel it. And I was sort of the same way, but now I've got my usual places I go to and explore more. And actually, I have not been disappointed. As long as you stick, I have found, with the name brands, you know the name, like Riley Blake or Moda or Northcott or something like that, then you know what quality you're going to get, kind of thing. So my next question for you then is, I know you're making these quilts for all your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren. Do you have any other goals or projects you would like to attempt in the future?
Oh my, yes. I would love to do a Texas Star.
Mm.
I would probably give that to my daughter. She lives in Texas. And I'm not that impressed with Texas, but she loves it. So she would really enjoy that.
Yeah.
And Jenny Doan has done several things with plates. Hold on, let me look at my list. There's a word I've forgotten. Dresden plates.
Dresden.
And she's done several, and I want to make pillows and maybe a wall hanging. I love those Dresden plates.
Yeah.
And I've done a few applique things. This I wanted to show you that I made.
Oh, that is beautiful.
And it's ultra suede. And
wow.
Talk about mistakes. The first thing I did after I did this applique was iron it. And I put a hot iron on that. And that imprint will never go away. Out. And this thing is probably 25 years old. I still wear it, and nobody has ever mentioned the iron thing in it. I love it.
And if they do mention it, you tell them it's a customization. And if they still don't like it, you just say, screw off, don't like you.
You know, I made an outfit for my oldest daughter when she was in high school. It was out of dark blue denim, and it was sort of a gaucho outfit. And she wore it to school, and her friends didn't believe that I had made it. You know, she never wore it again that I know of.
You're kidding.
But I was so flattered that I didn't care whether she ever wore it again. I thought, now that's a success.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. So I have a philosophy about quilting and in sewing in general that is not shared by the art world, but I believe what we do as quilters, as sewists, is art. And, you know, the purists in the art world feel art is things that hang up on a wall that you can sell and make lots of money from. And, you know, quilting and sewing is all a craft. Well, you know, it is a craft, but it's also an art. So as such, I consider us as artists. So how would you describe yourself as an artist? And what I mean by that question is, you've already said you're more into the traditional quilting, although you've already shown pieces that I would consider more artistic pieces than just, you know, following a pattern. So would you consider yourself an experimental or an innovative artist, or? How would you characterize yourself as an artist?
Once in a while have a good idea, but they're few and far between. I am mostly a technician. I can
Okay.
copy just about anything I see.
Ah, okay.
Of course, as a beginning quilter, I can copy a beautiful Ohio star, but it doesn't necessarily look that great.
No.
So I'm practicing. I'm getting there.
You get, yeah.
There. But, and I was the same way as a sewer. If I didn't have a pattern, nothing was coming. I could sometimes mix patterns together. You know, use a sleeve from
Right.
one, a neckline from another. But I really do consider myself more of a technician than an innovative artist.
But being a technician is being an artist.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, really. And you say you took some.
Even if the design isn't mine,
yeah.
It's still beautiful.
Yeah. And it's, I think too, part of being an artist is doing something that shows your creative spirit and is unique to you. And I think that's what, like you said, you took, you know, a piece from one pattern and mixed it with a piece of another. Well, you know, there are many people out there who will just stick by the rules, and you know, they're not really showing their creativity on that scale. So yeah, I would say, yeah, you definitely have the definition of an artist in you. So do you have any advice for anyone who wants to get started into quilting or sewing?
I think the biggest, people are so afraid of their mistakes that they quit instead of going on. You've got to be kind to yourself. And the mistakes in life with everything is how you learn. So, you know, why should that be any different in quilting? So I think some of the older ones are more beautiful because of the mistakes.
Yeah, I agree.
Practice, practice, practice.
Yeah.
Don't quit. Don't give up. If it's something you love to do it and don't worry about what other people think.
Exactly.
And as Karen Brown says, finished is better than perfect.
Exactly. And you learn from that. If you stop in the middle of the process because you think it's just not going to be good enough, then you're not going to learn from that. I totally agree with you. And there aren't any quilt police, and you're doing it for yourself. It's got to come from yourself first.
I think it was Jenny Doan that said, none of my recipients from my gift quilts have ever given it back and said, I don't want this, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
And I know I've made things that I was almost embarrassed to give, and they just loved. So you know, well, we're the eye of the beholder. They're loving it because I gave it to them, not because it's perfect.
Exactly. And really, we're our own worst critics when it comes down to it. You know, if someone spots a mistake in something you've made, you know, then they're not a friend. A friend will let that go. You know, they'll just consider it an embellishment. So, anyways, yeah.
There are quilters that will put in a mistake on purpose.
Yes.
You know, most of them are like there's that word again, the Quakers that make the
Mennonites or the Amish.
They actually, because only God is perfect.
Exactly. Yep, I've heard that.
Your best quilters will deliberately put a mistake in.
Yeah.
Just so they're not.
Yeah.
In God's face, you know what I mean?
Yep. I think one of my first quilts I made, I put in a block and didn't realize it upside down. And I was showing it to somebody, says, you know, I made this mistake. And I was a little upset about that. I had done something that stupid, right? And that's what they told me, the Amish Mennonite thing about, you know, only God is perfect. So, you know, kind of a deal. So that's how I explain my mistakes now. Only God is perfect and I'm not God.
Yeah, and Jenny Doan has a saying that I think, I know it's not unique to her, but she says, it looked great from a galloping horse.
Yep. That's the other line I use too. Yes, I remember that too. A man on a galloping horse going 3 miles an hour is never going to notice it. So yeah, exactly.
Right. So
well, Yep. Well, this has been great. I want to thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. And I think it's amazing that, and I don't want to make you sound old, but somebody at 77 years young is, you know, getting into this and doing it. And I think that's just inspirational in itself as well. You know, there is lots of life left in us if we, you know, just look at things as a new adventure. So thank you so much. Don't go away yet, but I am going to end the recording. But thank you so much, Karen, for doing this.
You're welcome.
And I am sure that I'll be talking to you in the future through my other channels as well. So thanks again.